Maybe, what if you made a, what if you, hi everybody and welcome to the webinar. You've just joined John and I geeking out about gaming. What if they made an OCD game, John? Like you could never, of course, win or get enough points to win the game because you, you, you could never
Well,
complete anything.
winning would involve taking chances,
Yeah,
doing an imperfect playthrough, because one way of
yeah,
obsessively playing is a completionist. So like you'd be
yeah,
penalized for being a completionist, and
right.
I think we could arrange the uncertainty within the game and kind of reward some risk taking.
It would be interesting. You could only win for losing in a way, or something
Well,
like
yeah,
that. But quote unquote, according to OCD, losing, winning in our world. But yeah,
yeah.
uh-huh.
And there was a game a long time ago called Torment, considered the best computer game ever written, where
Hmm.
part of the game was you would join different intellectual factions to how they approach the world besides all the other stuff. So we could include like a therapy faction versus you could try to play the OC demon faction, which would be
The
very
OC demon
difficult.
faction. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we've got
Mhm.
something here.
Well, John, I know our next talk at a conference together. I think this could be very, very
Yes,
fun.
I think so.
Well, once again, everyone, welcome to our Wednesday night webinar. I am Dr. Patrick McGrath. I'm with Dr. John Grayson. We are in the world of OCD, and we love to get together once a month here with all of you on our No CD sponsored Wednesday night webinar to answer your questions about our favorite topic, frankly, in the world of obsessive compulsive disorder. Although gaming may also be our new favorite topic that
I'll
we
be happy
discuss.
to do this, as a second
Yeah,
favorite. I'm
yeah,
open
yeah.
to questions. My
All
specialty
right.
is RPGs. Go on.
RPGs, yes, yes. Uh, what kind of OCD is that, John? I don't even know. Yeah, there we go. Wouldn't that be interesting? OCD is kind of a role playing. It's like the worst role playing game ever, right? You're instead of you playing it, someone else is playing it in your
And
body,
you.
almost like, yeah, they're playing it in you. Their role is to get you do the things that they want you to do, and not the things that you would like to do, and to intimidate the crap out of you to make you do it. Because if you don't, they're gonna throw some truth bombs, quote unquote, at you, and get you all frightened and disturbed and scared. Mm-hmm.
I think we've got the beginning of the game.
I existential OCD is going nuts right now about, wait, what if this is an RPG, and what if I am being controlled, and things of that nature. We see a lot of that going on too.
You mean
All right, well,
anyway.
as we do, we love to just kind of lately jump around and check on. Ooh, and we're getting already people. Ooh, RPGs and OCD. People are already liking this topic.
This could be like combining my two favorite things. Oh my God.
Yeah, geez. What do you know? Well, what we'll do is I'll start at the beginning as usual. John likes to jump around and grab things, and then the synergy between the two of us is always fascinating. So let me start with Peter. It is fun. It is.
Yes,
Let me start with Peter. 1 or 2 years ago, when I decided to stop your mental compulsions of repeating affirmations, you thought to yourself, well, what do I think about now? And that was a turning point for me, because I felt suddenly I became aware of my thinking process, and that I forgot how to think naturally and let thoughts flow. Since then, you've been obsessed with trying to figure out how to return to normal. So you basically replaced your stopping thinking, or your mental compulsions of affirmations, with now trying to figure out what to think about. So you took one compulsion, it sounds to me like, Peter, and you put another compulsion in there. So not a great trade. John and I would agree. We would not say that that would be the suggestion we would have. Our suggestion would be, let's consider, how do we go about allowing for the fact that we are a human being who has thoughts, and allow for the thoughts to be here. John, I don't know about you, but the moment somebody tells me how much they think about their thoughts, I'm automatically thinking, this is an interesting, potentially kind of OCD, because I would say, and I'd love your answer on this, people without OCD don't spend a lot of time thinking about their thoughts.
Well,
unless maybe they're philosophers, right? And they're paid
well,
to do
I look
so,
at it.
maybe. But
Well,
you tell me what your thought is.
and I think I've said this before. I think OCD, and in one hand, is a very philosophical disorder.
Yes,
They ask all the great questions of philosophy, and the only
correct.
difference between them and great philosophers is they actually want an answer.
Right, because the philosophers make a lot of money and write a lot of books about having no answers whatsoever. Mhm.
Right. Somebody studies their entire life studying a single philosopher because his answer is that complicated.
Mhm.
And I think the answer for Peter is not easy, but is simple. And really, it's important to remember simple and easy are like almost not related at all.
Oh
Um,
gosh, do we say that all the time or what? Just because
yeah.
something is simple doesn't mean it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, he's described, if I understand correctly, his, obsession is thinking about thinking, and his fear is that he will never be able to think normally again, and that he will forever be noticing his thinking, which will then interfere with his thinking because he's thinking about the thinking and just wants to be able to think without having to notice that he's thinking. And
Yeah.
so the very first goal is, I'm not going to say to not worry, is that the goal is to that we don't want to try to think normally. That is,
Right.
I'm not saying, it's like, yes, let's assume that you're always going to be thinking about thinking. I don't think that's actually true, but I would like to treat it that way because as long as you don't, I mean, it's
Hmm.
like anything, as long as you don't want to notice it, you're going to notice it. And
Correct.
uh, I would like, and we bring this up frequently here, to
Hmm.
go for second best, which is I would like you to learn how to
Hmm.
be aware of your thoughts and, be aware of thoughts. Not like you're trying to do it; it's just happening. But learning how to not do that and to do other things, which
Hmm.
you actually are technically doing. It's just that you're making it harder because you're also wishing, like, I wish this wasn't happening, and you keep comparing life to how much better it would be if you weren't noticing that. So in this sense, the thinking about thinking obsession is like hyper awareness of any kind. Do I notice my breathing? Do I notice a picture? Do I notice my heart rate? And the goal is learning to let it be there, so that and I say learning because if it's just letting it be there, I feel like you could correctly say, like, well, I don't know how to do that. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, and so part of it is to be determined that you're going to do two things at once. That is, there is this noise going on that's kind of interfering with my thinking, and there's my, I'm trying to get better at doing things while that's going on. And of course, the hardest part is this thing in the background where you keep going. I wish they would stop. I wish they would stop. I don't know what life would be like if you said, suppose this never stops. Suppose that's not an option.
Hmm.
And you might say to me, well, I'm going to go crazy or something like that. And like, probably not, because you've been doing this for 2 years, it sounds like, and you've been suffering. So, what if you gave up on trying to make it stop and decided it's like a achy back or something like that? And again, I feel I'm overstating it in the sense of saying, well, what if you just decide? It's not that easy. What if you decide that's my goal and that's what I'm going to work on? And I think that would be a beginning answer, I think.
I like what you said too, John, and I don't think people give themselves enough credit for how much they're managing all at the same time. I mean, just as we're doing this, we're breathing. I'm seeing you on the Zoom, but I can also see the rest of the room around me as well too. I'm cognizant of the feeling of the chair on my body and my hands on the arms of the chair. I'm hearing you, but I'm also hearing our to
Uh oh.
everyone.
Everyone froze. Yeah. Are you there? You froze for me. I don't know if I'm freezing for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
must have had a little
It was
glitch there.
that
Apologies.
tinnitus. That tinnitus
Um,
just threw the whole computer off.
yes, that's what it was. Yeah. Um, but there's like at least 5 or 10 things going on right now in addition to the conversation that we're having that could totally interfere in everything that we're doing but
And
doesn't have to interfere in everything.
and you know what?
Yeah.
And there is
Mhm.
that thing that we've talked about, which is there's a decision we sometimes make without realizing if we allow things to interfere or not.
Right.
So, for instance, getting back to gaming, uh, the new version of Baldur's Gate that's been in production for more than 3 years is dropping tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in California. So I have to get it on both my computers. And that is on my mind while all this is going on because I'm fairly excited about it. And the only thing that makes it not OCD is I'm not going like, oh my God, stop thinking about that. Just pay attention to what you're doing. But it's like, okay, that's there. And because I'm not trying to make it go away, in some sense, it's very much in the background. But it doesn't take, it's easy. That's coming way more to the foreground of my mind than tinnitus.
Yes.
But if I said to, like, no, you've got to stop thinking about that, well, then I'm in your situation.
Correct. Yeah. I'm even reminded, and John, I don't know if you remember this, but I brought this up in a panel that we did, gosh, probably 15 years ago now. It was a long time ago. One of the first ones you and I did together when we used to have the fun panels about ethics of ERP and how far you go
I
and
love
some of those
those.
things.
Yeah, right.
Those were so much fun. We'd share gum on stage and drink out of each other's water and all sorts of great things that we would do together. And this was really right before relationship OCD came out, and we had an interesting discussion about the idea of where is the line of I'm quote unquote obsessed with someone versus the relationship that we're having with them as well too. So even in these situations, I personally have really enjoyed watching the evolution of OCD and how we've experienced and how we think about OCD and its treatment even over the course of time, and how in the past we might have said, oh, you're a star-stuck person in relationships, and now we take a look at, oh yeah, there really can be an obsessiveness in the way we approach relationships as well too, and some compulsions and things. So it's always fascinated me, and what I love about our field and the work that we're doing is that we're never just sitting idly with all of this. We're always kind of assessing what's some new ways to think about this, and that leads me to say we're always thinking too, right? As therapists, we're always thinking too, and I hope we always continue to think and to think about this. But again, there's a scientific investigative kind of thinking, and then there's an obsessive kind of thinking, right? And OCD thinks the only way to solve problems is potentially through an obsessive kind of thinking, and it doesn't see that there's other ways to actually come to answers and conclusions other than following what it
I'd say
wants.
more of a pain in the neck because that's my specialty.
Please. Mm-hmm.
I would I would kind of maybe label it creative thinking versus OCD thinking.
Sure.
To go beyond scientific. And I would suggest that the purpose of thinking is really never to come to answers. It's always to come up with new questions. Because anything I discover, it's and anything in science, it's not like, okay, we found the secret of life. That's it. It's like, now what?
Yeah.
And even in a good relationship, there are questions we're asking without thinking about the questions, which is
Correct.
I am in this great relationship. What are we going to do today? How do we keep, I don't worry about how are we going to keep building, but we are always continually building and trying, and doing things. So we're always kind of moving forward, coming up with something new, as opposed to, well, that's the answer. Okay, done. Because even if we were done, it's like, well, okay, if I'm really done, now what am I going to ask questions about?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, there's one of my favorite bands, of course, being Rush. There's a line that I've always loved is the point of a journey is not to arrive. Anything can happen, and I've always liked that. That I like to set out and just see where I go and not have to get to a certain place. And maybe one of the more difficult things about OCD is it's defined that there is a place you have to get to, although it may not tell you exactly what that place is, but it will definitely tell you that you haven't gotten there yet.
Yes, I was going to say, it always assures you that you've a little bit more ritual, a little bit more, you'll get there, but you are not there yet.
You are just not there. Well, where am I going? I can't tell you, but I can tell you you're not there yet. So yeah. Any ones you wanted to jump on at all, John? Anything that you were thinking?
Well, I think, and I don't know, we have a newbie, clearly, Capo Regime, because they're basically asking all the questions of somebody who just discovered they had OCD. which means that you and I could talk for 6 hours to this individual.
We could start our intro. Welcome. I am Patrick McGrath.
Yeah. And so let me give some general advice to this individual.
Yeah.
First of all, that OCD, although one of the very devastating disorders one can have, is actually the one we can help the most. Now, if you've been looking for treatment and failing to find it, it's because although the treatment that's recommended has been around only since 1985 and recommended by the American Psychological Association, American Psychiatric Association, the International OCD Foundation, and virtually every OCD expert. So you'd think a treatment that works that's been around since 85 would be easy, but turns out it's easier to treat OCD than change the behavior of mental health professionals. So generally it's about 15 years before someone finds treatment after diagnosis. So let me give you some resources, because otherwise we'll just have to answer. So the main resource I'm going to send you is to the International OCD Foundation, IOCDF.org.
Mm-hmm. There's an F in there, just so
but there's where there's a lot of good information that's consistent about what you can do and where you can go. There's some good places for podcasts besides this one, obviously.
No CD channel on YouTube. Woo-hoo.
Yep. There's the OCDstories.com, where a lot of fairly
our friend Stuart Ralph.
Yeah. And also the IOCDF has a set of videos that you can watch. And then there are a couple of good books on OCD. There's really only one that pretty much all the experts dislike. So right, and we're saying the same one.
Yeah.
Because it's not really that useful, but so it's hard to go wrong though with a whole lot of the other books that are popular.
You and I both might have put one out at some point in time. I mean, it's a possibility.
We might have,
we might have.
Yeah. And Patrick's book is what's Patrick's book?
The OCD Answer Book.
The OCD Answer Book, yes. And mine would be freedomfromocd.com. Sorry, not .com.
Wow, your book is called .com? Man, you wrote your book before the internet came out? You named it .com? Who knew?
Yeah. Freedom from OCD. And there are a bunch of other books that are really good. There's John Hirschfield has had some good books. Kimberly Quinlan has a very nice book. But, obviously, although I think a lot of the books say the same thing, Patrick and I like our own books the most because they're the ones we most agree with, not that we disagree with the other ones.
Correct.
And that would be a start. I mean, I'm sorry we can't give. Well,
and if I just throw into if you want to develop a great community of people with OCD, the NoCD community is the largest online community of people with OCD right now. So you can go to nocd.com and download the NoCD app and have access to that, and a great amount of information as well too through there.
And one last thing, which is the core of almost all OCD symptoms, is the individual's trying to be 100% certain. And, you've probably discovered you can't be certain in the area of your problems. You're probably fine with other areas being uncertain,
Right.
You probably don't want, you don't want to die in a car crash, but you drive in a car if that's not your
Driving a car anyway.
But,
also don't want to run people over, but I still drive in a car.
As long as I don't get hurt. But research has shown that the only people who are certain are stupid. Think QAnon. So, most people with OCD are above average intelligence. So, the goal isn't to know, which is what you've been trying to do. The goal is to learn to live with uncertainty, the same way you can drive and not be afraid of that. So, yes, that's a bunch of work. So I'm just giving you the broad overview. The how to do it is all those places we sent you to.
Yeah. And keep in mind, the nickname of OCD is the doubting disorder. And the doubting disorder will always demand 100% answer. And it will never accept 100% answer because it's a doubting disorder, and it will doubt everything you give it. So therefore, you're on the hamster wheel of hell, just going around and around and around, trying to satisfy the unsatisfiable.
And you know what? I always think it shouldn't be called the doubting disorder.
Why is that? You tell us, please.
Because doubt is normal. It seems to be the order where people are trying to eradicate doubt. But
Oh,
that's
okay.
not possible, you know. But
How
it's
about
like,
the I want no doubt disorder? How does that sound?
yeah, exactly.
There you go.
For something like that. But
All right. We've just changed the name of it. It's now the I don't want doubt disorder.
yes,
Hmm. Okay.
I'm gonna let you jump around and pick the next.
Oh, okay. Boy, I hadn't even been looking because I figured you were going to do it. Let's see. Chris says guilt of perceived horrible wrongdoing that has to do with the death of a loved one. Oh my gosh. Uh, Chris, if you didn't watch last week's, please watch last week's the last 5 minutes of last week's show when I was doing this. John, we got into an interesting discussion last week about uh, people feeling bad about real events and
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that they're angry at themselves. And so I got pretty personal last week, and I talked about the fact that when Susan was sick for those 5 years, I lost my cool a few times. I could have been better at times, right? There were days she dropped four things on the floor and spilled four different drinks, and I had to clean them up and do all sorts of other stuff. And so I asked the audience at the end of the show last week how many years I should punish myself for the fact that I wasn't perfect with her. And here was a woman who was dying, and there was a couple of times that I really just wasn't the best and I didn't perform at my A+ game. And so, Chris, I think even in this situation, I would ask a similar kind of thing. I have I have lost a wife to cancer. How much should I be at blame for it? And how much punishment do I deserve over the fact that she died? In fact, and I'm going to get very personal again here, I'm the one who called the family meeting together with both sides of the family and said, I will not participate in any more treatment anymore because I saw Susan every time that she went for another round of therapy get sicker instead of better. And while there would be people who would come to the house for a few minutes at a time here or there and say, oh, she seems great, they weren't with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week like I was. And I was watching her decline and get worse and worse and worse. And so, Chris, how terrible of a person and a husband was I that I said, I will no longer ethically be a part of the treatment for Susan because all I do is see it killing her faster. And I will no longer be a part of that.
And you know, I think you and a lot of other people, I have noticed, to get personal, that you do suffer from this other problem that I think we cannot help you with, which is I think no matter what we do, you're going to continue to be a human being.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think this
Yeah.
stuff is going to keep happening, Patrick. I just
Yeah.
want to let you know.
Yeah. Yeah. John, it was interesting too. Like there would be times that she fell. So I guess I could blame myself over the fact that I wasn't there holding her and carrying her the entire time. And then, of course, there were, after the falls, the trips to the emergency rooms. And it got to the point where they would ask her what happened and they wouldn't let me talk because they would look at me suspiciously like,
Hmm.
oh, your wife fell again. Well, why don't you step out of the room, sir, while we just check with her to see what happened? And then, luckily, I had pictures of her PET scans, and I would pull them out and say, by the way, that's her scan. And they'd go, oh, okay. Then suddenly it was like, oh, all right, all right, all right. But even I was looked at suspiciously at times
Of
about things
course.
of that
Yeah.
nature, right?
Yeah.
And so then I could take that as a real event and go, wait a minute, did I do something? Could I have done something better? Was that actually my fault? And maybe had I thought about every possible thing that could have happened, then I could have put seatbelts on all the chairs at the house so that she didn't fall out of the chairs, and I could have done all these other things, and maybe it turns out I really am a terrible spouse for the fact that I didn't think every one of those things very thoroughly through.
And you know, I think in looking at this question, I mean, because there are two versions of it. You know, there's which what gets to be called real OCD,
Hmm.
because I'm concerned about a real event. I like the way Chris put it because he put of a perceived horrible wrongdoing, so
Right,
he's not
perceived.
100% sure. The treatment for like where I actually did something terrible versus maybe I did something terrible are really similar. Because, you
Hmm.
know, people don't really take it seriously when I talk about uncertainty, you know, which isn't to say like nothing bad, you know, it's OCD, so it's not real. It's like, no, it's real. And the thing is, if we did something where it's definite, Okay, so no question, we did it. It's horrible. Um, I mean, whether I ran over a little kid because I was looking at my phone at that moment, um, so I feel like I could justifiably feel guilty about that. And the thing is, it's learning how to feel guilty and how to forgive oneself. And forgive oneself is kind of a funny thing because when I say that, and when you
Hmm.
ask most people here, I'm of the belief they'll go like, "Well, I don't know how to forgive myself," because I think they have this idea forgiving myself means I'm okay, and it doesn't mean that.
Yeah,
Forgiving myself means I understand what I did wrong and feel terrible about it, and I believe I've changed and it's not going to be repeated.
yeah,
But I will always feel sick about running over that little kid.
yeah,
And yes, I need to incorporate that in my life as opposed to I have to somehow eradicate it. But yes, you're going to
yeah,
feel guilty. That is okay. Whether your guilt was very conscious, you actually murdered someone,
yeah,
or and for the perceived one, it's kind of there's two answers. It's like, well, if you actually did that, um, then let's talk about how you'd forgive yourself for that. And because you're not sure, we'll talk about how you would forgive yourself if you really did it. And we're going to pretend it's OCD in the sense of we're going to live as if it didn't happen. But still, in terms of like, oh, and if you did that, like, here's how you would have to learn to forgive yourself because,
mhm,
you know, and we'll go full hog on dealing with the trauma of what you did when you wake up one day with 100%. Oh yeah, I actually definitely did this. But even if somebody definitely did this and then they're obsessing about how that ruined their life, the goal is, yeah, how do we help you move on? And yes, okay, you made a horrible mistake. I mean, people
yeah,
make horrible mistakes, where it's clear that everybody would agree this was bad. And, rather than living the
sure.
fantasy life of what could have been, trying to live like, how do I move on from here?
And and one other little sneaky piece, I'd love your opinion on this, on what OCD will do is say, and if you stop thinking about it, it will make it more likely that it will happen again. So if we keep it in the forefront of your mind, you'll always be paying attention for it. And therefore, by paying attention for it, you'll be aware of it all times, and that awareness will prevent it from happening again. So it turns out to be a good thing that I'm constantly reminding you of the possibility of.
Yeah. Which reminds me, and this will sound a tad strange, of stubbing my toe. Dramatic pause. So everybody can go like, what?
What?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I believe that in the course of the next year, I'm going to stub my toe.
Oh, I'll
And,
join you on that. I'll take that bet. I will stub my
and
toe.
after the
Hmm.
fact, it is quite
Hmm.
likely I could go like, I know exactly what I did wrong.
Hmm.
Now, I could be wrong in this next belief. I believe that if I attempted to make sure I never stubbed my toe, I would still fail.
Yes.
I can, and so I
Yes.
actually, for years, have a very odd automatic response when I stub my toe. Rather than screaming out the usual expletive that,
Hmm.
makes sense, literally what comes out of my mouth is, ah, the inevitables happened.
I knew it. I knew it.
And so because the sad thing about most rituals
Yeah.
is you don't get the prize. Like you're doing all that work and everything, and
Oh, yeah.
whatever nightmares you don't want still can occur.
John, let me run this by you. I'd love your opinion on this. I've said recently the reason OCD to me is not scary is because it is one of the most predictable things in the entire world. And people say to me, and I know they say it to you too, how do you know what my brain's thinking? And you don't even have OCD. How do you know what my brain's thinking? I say, very simple. OCD turns out to be, to me, one of the most predictable things in the entire world. And I've discovered the pattern of OCD. So therefore, because I know the pattern, I know exactly what it's going to tell you and how it's going to be working inside of your head because OCD follows a pattern.
And that's absolutely true. And I'm going to now reveal, not reveal because it's not new, but it's kind of a secret of overcoming OCD. But it's like everything I say, it takes a lot of work as opposed to doing it. I was seeing a woman who was doing incredibly well in treatment. And but one day she said to me, John, I've had OCD since, and she lets me talk about her, by the way. I've had
Mhm.
OCD since the age of 4, and I've always kind of felt like I can control things. Like if I got a cancer and they told me it wasn't curable, I'd find a way to cure it. I'm going like,
Hmm.
How would you do that? I said, I'd go on the internet. I said, so let me get this straight. You're a kind of person, you always see the best doctors, and you're going to go on the internet, find something they don't know, and you're going to be able to distinguish between the crap on the internet and the real thing. And for some reason, on this occasion, this like hit her. She just kind of like, her face kind of got a little spacey, and she's like, but what is there? And I looked at her and said, the odds. All you have are the odds.
Mhm.
She came back the next week and she said to me, all week I've been walking around in a daze just muttering the odds. And that was 2 years ago. And although she was doing great on her OCD, what she would add and tell you now, from that day when she came back till now and continuing, that's when she stopped being depressed. From age 4 till that session, she was always depressed because she was always a failure because she couldn't control things. And she literally gave up control. And, I mean, said we'd been working together, but there was something that really hit her about that. And it wasn't like life was easy then. Her sister had been diagnosed with a cancer that at the time, right, a little bit after this, at a time when it wasn't clear whether she was going to be okay or not. Her dad going a bit senile and has heart problems. She had a dog, and when she came into treatment, she was afraid to say the dog was sick, and the dog was sick and dying, and the dog died during this period. So it wasn't like, oh, life was easy. She was suddenly living with the odds and understanding that it's not like, low odds events happen, low probability events. So it's not like,
They
it's not
sure do. Hmm.
it's comforting that they're low probability, and we would like to learn to get more comfortable with them, but we still have to adapt to they can happen and just live with the odds, and which is basically just another way of saying learning to live with uncertainty. Um, so again, one can't decide to live with uncertainty. One can decide I want to learn to do that, and but I think I can't learn it. That it's not a goal. I've got to know
Hmm.
that that's what I'm attempting.
Hmm.
And then it gets to be predictable, like the way you're saying. Yeah, wait, right. Whenever somebody with OCD says something like, "I'm going this really fun thing. I hope my OCD doesn't hit me," it's like, seriously?
Yeah, right. Guess what? Yeah.
You're sorry, you're doing this, and you
Yeah.
don't want your OCD to be there. This is a guarantee.
Yeah. That's almost like a meme. OCD, one of these things go, what? You
Yeah.
know? Like, yeah. Oh, well, let me join you for the ride then. Here I am. Mhm. Yeah. Awesome. I love our banters. Good times. Legendary G says, will I get depression? OCD is fine. I just don't want to be depressed. Please tell me how to prevent depression. Well, one great way to prevent depression is to make sure that you're always working on your OCD and doing your ERP work. Why? If you think about the definitions of depression, there's two things that we always look at first. You have to have one of the first two definitions in the DSM. One is I feel depressed, or two, I've lost interest or pleasure in things I've once enjoyed. Well, guess what OCD picked up? Things you enjoy. Why would you lose pleasure in things? Because OCD now has taken over a lot of those things, because OCD always picks on things that you love, enjoy, are important to you. So if you want to make sure, one great way to make sure that you don't get depressed, keep doing your ERP exercises. Don't let OCD stop you from doing the things in your life that you enjoy, and continue to get joy and pleasure and fun and excitement and all sorts of things out of them. And I think that you'll notice that your depression will go down. And we actually published a paper on this, and did a poster on this, showing that even without specifically intervening in depression, depression scores went down significantly when we helped people with their obsessive compulsive disorder.
I'm thinking this individual, besides not wanting to be depressed, I'm thinking that they don't want to have pancreatic cancer and die. I'm thinking they don't want to be
Probably, yeah,
remain paralyzed and disfigured in a car crash.
yeah,
I'm presuming they don't want to become psychotic and see a three-headed dog come out of the wall, talk to them, and they have no doubt that it's there.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and what I'm suggesting is going back to what I was just saying, doing everything Patrick said is right in the sense that that changes the odds in favor of depression not getting you, but you might become depressed. And our goal is to hope to cope with it if it happens. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna have to go on an antidepressant or switch antidepressants, and maybe there'll be some other things going on in life that some psychotherapists can also help you focus on besides the OCD. So, you know, the odds may be in favor of not becoming depressed, but it's still something that you might have. We don't get a choice of what to cope with. I mean, I said that, so many OCD things are this can't happen, and it can. And so, but I mentioned a whole bunch of other things that you cope with. And so what that should hopefully tell you is either you need to get much crazier and start worrying about every one of those. And I think the list of things we could generate would be really long and too exhausting.
Billions. Yeah.
Or kind of like, okay, you know what?
Mhm.
I want to learn to make my fear of depression like all those other things I don't want. Like, yeah, I don't want them. And my brilliant plan is I'll try to deal with it if it starts happening.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think of this, John? Maybe one of the, I don't even want to say side effects, maybe just one of the effects of OCD is also a selective lack of confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe I can handle this thing. I can handle all these other things, and maybe even things that most people wouldn't even do. I may be a deep sea diver without using any form of scuba gear or breathing apparatus, and I've set world records on that, but I'm also afraid to go do it because what if I left the door open and somebody breaks in and steals the cat, right? So I think that there's a fascinating selectiveness in this idea of what I can and cannot handle.
Yeah, yeah. Or a decision. I refuse to handle that one.
Yeah.
And because no one here is stupid, there's the awareness, but that might happen, and then I'm in a cycle. Yeah. So even without OCD, I could just be in an awful cycle. I just wouldn't be doing so many rituals over it. I could fear death and be constantly upset and depressed about it. And with OCD, I'm going to start doing some kind of rituals over illness or something else where it looks to other people like I'm doing a lot of things that don't make sense. Whereas if I just was sticking on the one, but anything is possible, even like getting, abducted by aliens. I
Mm-hmm.
think low probability, really not expecting it. Um,
Yeah.
but, it's what would I do if I was in that situation? Because if I'm in that situation, I don't have the choice of it can't happen. I mean, that's the definition of denial, comparing the real world to reality. And, it's like I'm trying to say, I don't want to be in a world where this can happen, and it can. And again, in the pandemic, you saw normal people, so-called normies, engaging in denial. This can't go on all summer, really. I can't put
Mm-hmm.
up with it if it does. Well, that looks almost funny 3 years later because you did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's this feeling of I don't want to put up with this. So it's not going to happen, um, and that makes people more anxious. It's like, all right, this might happen. How am I going to deal with it? It really sucks. I don't like it. Okay, but the alternative doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. Love it. Love it. What should I do if my intentional ERP practice doesn't increase my SUDS levels, my anxiety,
Oh, I
my
love this one.
feelings?
Go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you would. That's why I picked it. But when I'm unintentionally thinking about it, my SUDS have a higher chance of increasing. Go.
There's two things. One is for all people, when you're doing, for you, when you're doing ERP, you are prepared for it. You are ready. It's like,
Right.
okay, I am going to now do this. And so you get yourself in a really good mindset.
Mm-hmm.
There is a myth that if you're not getting increased SUDS during ERP, it's not working. Not true. You'll be happy to know.
You're still
Um,
practicing.
you're
Mm-hmm.
still practicing, and but when it catches you off guard, you're more likely to return to old patterns automatically. So one of the
Yeah.
purposes of ERP and doing it a lot and listening to scripts a lot is to raise the odds that when you get caught off guard, you will engage in exposure versus non-exposure. But you're right. It's going to hit you harder because that is what happens when you're unprepared. So what we're
Yes.
attempting to do is have you jump back into doing ERP, kind of like, oh, it's like, oh, that's right, I got to do this ERP. This
Yep.
sucks. But we're trying to raise the again, odds. It's not like not doing ERP is like automatically making everything better. It's raising the odds that you'll respond in a good way, and that will snowball into getting better and coping with those situations. But it's
Yep.
we can duplicate your experience with lab rats.
Yep.
It turns out everything we do is reducible to lab rats.
Yep. I liken it to this too, John. The intentional house fires set by firefighters in rural areas to practice may not be as scary as the high-rise fire that they have to go into, but I'm sure glad they practiced on those intentionally set ones.
I love that. I like that analogy. That's good. I
Yeah,
like that one. I might steal that.
go right ahead,
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They still set you up for success, right? So
yes,
it works. It
right.
works. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 740.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay, go to 740 because there's one here that's completely mysterious,
okay.
but it's not an OC question as near as I can tell. So
Okay. So we'll
let's
go to
go on.
7.
Yeah.
But this is again up your alley. Hi, it's from Angeline. Can you talk about intrusive feelings? I obsess about this deep feeling I shouldn't be with my partner and that I actually know it's true. I've always loved when people tell me, I feel like this is true. Boy, if OCD loves one phrase, it's I sure feel like this is true. Is just a favored selection of the
Yeah.
OCD world.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would certainly have a few questions
Hmm.
about the nature of. For some reason, I can't get down to 740. It won't let me. Um, that's weird. Um,
Here, let me pop it up here. I'll show it on the screen so you can see it.
oh, okay, good. Okay, I didn't see the quotes that she actually knows it's true.
Yeah, there you go.
So you put it in quotes, so you're not 100% true.
Hmm.
And I have two or three thoughts. Um, one, um, if we had the magic feeling meter that I could measure your true feelings, and you have to guess what the meter is going to come up, and we're going to bet your right arm as to whether you want to, that you should or shouldn't be with your partner in terms of feeling it. And then we're going to do the feeling meter. And if you're correct, you get to keep your right arm. And if you're wrong, you don't. I wonder which guess you would make. By the way, if you don't make a guess, we're taking the arm.
Hmm.
And if you tell me you can't really tell at all, then you would be telling me that, okay, then rather than making a guess, you'll allow me to make the choice of having your arm or not on a coin toss. That is so 50-50. I might as well flip a coin and you don't want to make a guess at all. Now, many people, and this may not be true here, would make the kind of normative guess, which doesn't make them right, but they would make that guess. And I would say, well, okay, that's the way you're leaning, and that's as good as it gets. And generally, the one thing I believe right now is, although you're not sure whether you're not 100% sure you should be with your partner or not, I'm thinking you're not ready to leave your partner, or that the only reason you might really leave your partner for sure is maybe that'd make the anxiety stop, which don't do that, it won't work, or it'll just carry on to the next one. So, that's one thing. And the thing is, like, do you have to feel every moment that you want to be with your partner? I can assure you that, I've been with my spouse for 50 years, and I am sure that she doesn't so much think should I leave him. It's like, but it's almost not like, oh, I'm so great she's not going to leave me. It's more like, yeah, he does that. I'm not going to leave him. No, he's got this other stuff. So but if she's not allowed to have any negative thoughts about me, or if I'm not allowed to have negative thoughts about her, and she is perfect, so I don't know how I could do that. But if I'm not allowed to have any negative thoughts about her, then as soon as I have a negative thought, I have to be concerned. Why am I thinking that? Or what if it's a day where I'm just kind of pissed off or something, and it's like, oh my God, look, I'm not as excited that day. So it's not like every day is like orgasmic
No.
bliss. And so
No.
and by focusing on that, so in a way, in a short run, we'd be asking you, well, you're not ready to leave, so we'd ask you to stay. And I think, again, there's more complexity because I don't know what your expectation is. It reminds me, Kathy and I did this trip to Paris. And of course, you say you went to Paris and everybody's eyes glaze over because that's like,
Ah, the city of love.
right.
Yes.
And
Oui,
every
oui.
morning we'd go
Yes.
to a patisserie and we'd have a croissant and coffee and it was so romantic, but it is just a damn piece of pastry. And we went to this place that had the best cafe LA. We went 2 days and then we didn't go there. The other places weren't good, but like it was still a great vacation. We went to see the catacombs, which is really bizarre because it's literally the bones of 6 million people piled up against the walls. We had to wait in the hot sun for 3 hours to see that, you
Mhm.
know. But it was still a great vacation. We went to one really great fine restaurant, but it's not like we're really foodies, so it's not like we're necessarily gonna like, whatever we're gonna eat. But it was still an experience. And so my point is, it was a great vacation. But I could find parts of the vacation that were not great, even though
Yeah.
we liked it and we wanted to do it every day. And you know, it is like life. So I think part of your expectations are really hard. And again, I know what I'm asking is very hard because quite often the person with ROCD is having it because they're afraid to leave and don't want to leave. And afraid, well, I
Right.
don't really love them. I have to leave, but I don't want to leave. But what if I have to leave? And it seems like for the present, and this is just short run solution. I think you probably need more help. It's like unless you can be sure with no doubt for 2 weeks you want to leave, then I'd have you stay and and
Yeah.
and and accept this person as second best.
Right.
Maybe your lover's not the ideal best one. Maybe they're the second best. But we all, in some respects, do it because I can assure you that since we've been together for 50 years, I don't look quite as good as I did when I was 22, and yet Kathy still keeps me. You know, she's now
Mhm.
settling for second best in looks, and uh, and so second best isn't bad.
I want to show you a quote that I really like. It's from Peter, and it says, leave that first line. Most details of my life are made without my consent. I love that.
That is beautiful, Peter.
Isn't that amazing? That is fantastic. Yes.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know what, Peter? I'm probably going to add to that or something. I am stealing that. Unless you, unless,
He's. I can see
unless,
him typing it right now. He's stealing.
yeah,
He's totally stealing that.
unless you tell me that I have to credit you, I probably won't. If you tell me I have to credit you, I'll say and it depends whether you want your name or not. Like if you want to just be some guy, or like you want me to like say like Peter Stassi, you know, uh, I do love that. Holy
That is fabulous. Good job, Peter. Mhm. And then he says, that's what I have found my OCD does not like. Sometimes it's easier to treat your life like a river you're floating down. So,
right. And
mhm.
I think you're right. Except I think it takes a lot of work to get to that point where I can
Yeah,
do that. Um, Thanks for giving me the time to write this down.
yeah. No, no problem. Most details of my life are made without my consent. Fabulous.
It is absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely fabulous. Yeah. I hear John typing it away right now.
Well, I feel like the only language I speak besides English is I'm really pretty decent at fluent cliche.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, and I think I've come up with some good sound bites. I mean, I have this thought of like taking all my sound bites together and publishing them with like a 2 to 4 paragraph description of how it's relevant to OCD and everything. This has to go in the list.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can you can go on. Thank you for giving me time to do that.
Peter says, enjoy. I don't need credit. Thank you for the work you do in these live chats. So there you go.
Thank you.
So, all right. Michelle says, Dr. Grayson, saw you speak live at USC a few years ago. Great presentation, and thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
Anya says, can you enable captions for these? You know what? I'll have to look into that, Anya. Let me see. I'll
Captions mean like our words?
Yeah, like just for closed captioning. If somebody
closed caption,
yeah, somebody could read along. So, yeah, you know what? I'll have to take a look into that. I'm not too sure. Okay, we did the personal feelings one.
Yeah, today it's on you because for some reason my feed stops at 5:53.
Oh, that's really weird.
Unless
Okay.
it's doing it my time. Oh, I'll bet it's doing it my time.
It's your time. You're 2 hours back.
It's so clever. It's reaching into my past. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. You'll like this one, Jeff. Deadbeat Jack. Let's pull that one up. I knew you were. See, I knew it. I knew you'd like that one. How can I move past the angst of feeling like I've been dealt a bad hand in life for having this debilitating disorder? Hey, Deadbeat Jack, how can I move past the angst of feeling like I've been dealt a bad hand in life for my wife to get cancer a year after we got married, and then she was sick for 6 years, and then she died, right? John, how can you move past the angst of feeling like blank, right? I believe every single one of us could ask this question about something in our lives, right?
Yes, and I can never give a straight answer.
I know you can't. That's why I knew you would like this question.
And so and again, everything's a story, and there are 2 stories. One is a Game of Thrones story.
Okay.
There was an episode where Sanya, who had just been completely abused and tortured and raped when she's younger, now she's queen, and she's doing pretty good, and she's quite powerful. And she says this statement on the show, which aroused a firestorm in a lot of people because they didn't understand it. Because she said something like, all those things made her strong today. So a lot of people misinterpreted that as, oh my God, are you saying that you needed those horrible things to happen? And she wasn't saying that.
No, she wasn't.
Because the thing is, they say you learn from adversity. Not true. You can learn from adversity. And as long as you went through the hell, you might as well get the consolation prize. And I'm reminded of another patient, and although it pains me, I'm going to do the short version of her story.
Mm-hmm.
She was really remarkable and really cool. But one day in the support group, she announced, she said, I have no regrets about having OCD. I mean, I'm really glad that I have it under control now.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've learned some things from from my OCD. I've learned to be more empathetic in that. And more important, I like who I am. And I might be some really nice other person if I didn't go through this or not. I don't know if I'd like her. I like me. So I don't regret that I had to go through it. And it's not great slipping, but for me, I just view that as like, that's practice. And I think the thing that's so beautiful of what she said, again, somebody lets me talk about her, is you have OCD, that doesn't make you defective. I mean, it sucks when it's in control. And yes, you want to get under control. And, in terms of being dealt, whether the goal for everyone is like, how do I make the best of whatever I have? And, we've said this before here. Sometimes I'm afraid to say things because we've said it before. We're talking about acceptance, and acceptance sucks. Mm-hmm. Acceptance is like, let me live the second best life. And why? Well, one reason trying to live the first best is impossible. And also because it doesn't happen. So would you like the rest of your life to suck because of some difficulty? Or do you want to learn to make a good life for yourself. And although it's a debilitating disorder, with good treatment and some decisions that you're stuck making, you can have a good life. Maybe you've lost time
Yeah.
and you wish you could get it back. Okay, that's not you can't. You're right, you can't.
Yeah.
But you can have a long future. I'm 70, 71 really, but currently not the average, but max age for my age cohort is 120. Probably won't make 120, but people will, so I could have another 50 years, which is a whole nother lifetime.
Ooh,
So,
it's a lot more webinars. So,
oh yeah.
yeah.
So, it's not moving past the feeling. It's like you can say, hey, I have been dealt a bad hand. What am I going to do about it? In fact, if
Right.
I've been dealt a bad hand, okay, this living with uncertainty garbage, that sounds really difficult. I guess I really have to do that. I have to throw myself into treatment because, it's not that one, you know, going through treatment is hard as not going through treatment. And the only difference is it's an end of rituals at one point. So
Yeah.
I would wish it would make you more determined because I can't do anything about the fact you got stuck having OCD. But so
Also,
many
just
people with OCD have great lives. And so, you
that's
know,
right.
in fact, just briefly, I don't know that I can cope with anything thrown my way. I'm really lucky and I feel like I haven't been seriously challenged. I'm not arrogant enough, hard to believe, that I can cope with anything. But I know that for every problem that I've seen people who handle it heroically, you
Yeah,
know, in the
I'll go
fact
with that.
that I mean,
Hmm.
like Patrick is one of those people. And so what it tells me is that it's possible. Can I do it? I don't know, but it's
Thank you.
possible. And that's what I always hope to emulate.
One of the signs Susan had, and of course, people give you plaques and signs, and inspirational things. But one I really liked, it said, "Stop looking backwards because that's not where you're going."
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that one a
Yes.
lot, you know. And I would remind her of that at times when she would want to apologize to me. I'm so
Uh,
sorry I got cancer. I'm so sorry our marriage didn't turn out the way it was going to be. I'm so sorry we're not traveling. And I would say, I'd point to that sign and say, hey, why are you looking backwards, right? What are we going to do? Let's not worry about all the things we didn't get to do because that's just going to make us sad and depressed and want to just sit around and be mopey. Let's figure out what we are able to do and go do that instead, right? So that's where I really like people too. And another person I think about is my favorite band being Rush, of course, and Neil Peart, the greatest drummer in the history of the world. He talked about the fact that if he'd see a great drummer, he'd be inspired, right? He'd want to go practice more. He said, but he would hear other musicians who would say, "Oh, I went and saw so and so play guitar, and it made me want to quit." And he thinks, why would you see something like that and decide that you want to quit? Why doesn't that inspire you to want to be better? And so that's what I hope to instill in people with OCD. You see where you are. You have a few choices. One is you could just quit and give in and say, I'm going to have this the rest of my life. This is the way it's going to be. And there's no way out of this. Or there's another option which says, I have this. I'm going to have this the rest of my life. But I can learn to live with it and live the life that I want to live and not the life that my OCD wants me to live. And when you choose that, you can do, like you said, John, great and amazing things. And we see so many even therapists in our OCD community who have OCD, who have worked through their OCD, who treat people with OCD, who still get triggered at times with their OCD when they're treating people with OCD, but who figure out the ways to manage that and move forward and don't just keep looking backward. So,
and I think rather than answers, I would go to a quote from one of my favorite bands. Sometimes the light's all shining on me, other times I can barely see. Lately it occurs to me what a long, strange trip it's been.
mm-hmm. Little Grateful Dead for you there. Thank you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, John, as always, these hours just go by so fast.
I
And
know, I know.
I I've always excited of our conversations. For everyone to know, John Grayson joins us once a month here. Every fourth week, we have him joining our No City Wednesday night webinar. And for those of you who are looking for some help internationally, nationally, for obsessive compulsive disorder, hoarding, OCD related disorders like excoriation or trichotillomania or tics, we at No City are available to you. Check us out at nocd.com. And we would love to be able to assist you in any way that we can. We also do work internationally as well as nationally. And John, I always give you a chance to plug the book or other things that you've got going on.
Well, I mean, gee, I hate plugging the book, but okay, freedomfromocd.com, and right on practicing in Pasadena. And, for the next 14 hours, I'm going to just be thinking about this day 3 is dropping, so I can download it onto both my computers.
Well, in that case, everyone knows, do not call John Grayson at 8 o'clock in the morning, California time tomorrow. He will not answer your call. So, he will be very preoccupied with something else. So, all right. Well, John.
Pleasure as always.
See you in 4 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Great to have you here. We'll see you back again next week. Talk to you later.